This is Dr. Jonathan Hansen, President of World Ministries International, and I want to welcome you to the Warning Television program. January 26, 2017, I was in Israel, and on this date, I actually interviewed in Jerusalem, Israel, Rebecca Lewis Brimmer. She's the President and CEO of Bridges for Peace International. It's going to be a fascinating interview. You're going to enjoy it very much. But I was in Jerusalem, Israel, primarily to attend the Night to Honor the Friends of Israel, January 25, 2017, at the Waldorf Astoria. This is the third time I've been invited as a friend of Israel. It's a tremendous banquet, but it's put on by the World Jewish Congress and the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. And they want to honor those that they consider their friends, that are helping to support them, defend them. And the reason why I've been invited, I believe, is because I've been many years now going to Israel, interviewing the different leaders of Israel on every area of the country, Syrian border, Lebanon border, Gaza Strip, but interviewing the leaders and telling the world the real story, what is really going on. And you will find out in this trip that I was with different members of the Knesset. I spent a day at the Knesset. In the Knesset, I interviewed the Knesset member, Glick. He's actually a rabbi. I also interviewed the chairman of the World Jewish Congress in the Gaza, or I should say on the Gaza Strip, actually in his bomb shelter, the Israel side of the Gaza Strip, as well as in a military lookout tower. But I also interviewed Robert Ilatov. I interviewed Robert Ilatov on the night of the Friends of Israel banquet in the Waldorf Astoria. He's a tremendous, I believe, leader in Israel, and you'll find that interview fascinating. I interviewed different other people, like the co-chairman of the person that represents the Republican Party. He's an attorney, tremendous attorney, Mark Zell. He's a mover and a shaker. I've interviewed in Jerusalem also Jan Willem van der Hoeven. He is the director of the International Christian Zionist Center. The director, and I'll tell you what, he's a tremendous man of God. So ladies and gentlemen, I want you now to pay attention as we go to Israel right now with Rebecca Lewis Brimmer. Bridges for Peace. This is Dr. Jonathan Hansen, President of World Ministries International, coming to you from Jerusalem, Israel. Now I want to welcome you to the Warning Television program. I have a special guest with me. Before I get to her, I want to just share that last night we did meet, January 25, 2017, in the Waldorf Astoria at a banquet honoring the Friends of Israel. We both attended. Actually, Rebecca spoke, but we both attended, and it was put on by the World Jewish Congress and the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. Again, honoring those that are involved with Israel, with trying to keep Israel free. And as you know, this program does a lot of television from this location all through Israel, meeting with different leaders and telling the other side of the story that mainline news does not project. Trying to get you the real idea what is really going on here in the Promised Land. And as you and I both know that if Israel falls, I believe the world falls. I believe Israel and the United States of America have a destiny together. We're interlocked together, if you want to say, by the hip, with our Judeo-Christian values and beliefs. And if we crumble, the world crumbles, and we're into this new world order. We're into tyranny. Rebecca, welcome to the program Warning.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
Rebecca Brimmer.
Yes, but please call me Becky.
Becky.
All my friends call me Becky.
And you are the president and CEO of Bridges of Hope International.
Actually, it's Bridges for Peace, but I hope we have a good time.
That's right. Well, Bridges for Peace International. Well, Yeah, well, you and I were talking about the hope it brings.
That's
and,
right.
I think that's a good alternate name.
Well, I have to talk to my board about that.
There you go, Bridges for Peace International. But, Bridges for Peace does give tremendous hope. And last night at the banquet, there was so much hope by the various speakers.
Yes.
And so without that hope, there is no future, there is no destiny. And I know people need hope. We were talking about people in grief just in your office.
Yes, that's
and
right.
the hope that is needed for these people. But let's get back to what you're doing. What is Bridges for Peace International? What it's all about? What are you folks doing?
So basically, we're a reconciliation ministry.
Okay.
I think that most Christians don't really know how hurt the Jewish people are by the centuries of Christian actions toward them. And so the Lord has put in our heart that we need to help overcome the grief of the past that the Jewish people have experienced.
Okay.
I don't know if you've encountered this as much as I have, but most Jewish people think that the Nazis were Christians.
Yes.
And
that's
they
true.
They think that 6 million of their family members were killed by Christians.
That's right.
And this is, when I first heard this, it was shocking to me. And I remember saying to Jewish people, I said, no, you're wrong. No, Hitler was not a Christian. He was a madman. Christians would never do this. And they would look at me in astonishment. And they'd say, like, what rock did you crawl out from under?
That's right.
They would say, why, they were members of the church, and the church never excommunicated them. And they would say they wore crosses, and they carried Bibles, and they celebrated Christmas, and they forced our musicians to play Christian songs. Don't tell us they weren't Christians. And so the Lord put in the hearts of our founder and all of us that have followed him that we need to be part of healing that.
A lot of times here when I meet with government leaders or other leaders all through Israel and just ordinary people, for that same reason, I put a disclaimer out and say, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian. I'm not a crusader. I was not involved with the Inquisitions. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not trying to take Jerusalem over for the Pope. I'm a Christian working hand in hand with you. We serve the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're on the same team, and I'm sorry for what's happened in the past.
Exactly.
And I go on. But no, I agree totally with you, and that misconception is all through Israel.
It's all through the Jewish world. Not just
you're
Israel.
right. I was just going to say that. Even all through the Gentile world, so to speak. You ask people who they are and what they believe in, and there's a lot of false idea of what a true believer in Jesus Christ really is.
Right. And so because of this, you can't just overcome something that is such a deep belief system.
That's right.
By saying words. And I often express to Jewish people my deep sorrow for what happened to them in the past.
Good.
I was recently at a absorption center talking to them about how we could help with Jewish people that are coming from the former Soviet Union. And the director took me to a timeline of Jewish history on the wall. And it had everything from Abraham until the present day. And he said, if you could go to any place in this history and meet anybody, where would you go? Who would you meet? And I didn't think for more than a second. And I walked over that timeline and I put my finger at 1933. And he says, well, why would you go to 1933? Why wouldn't you want to meet with Moses or David or, one of the great prophets? And I said, I would go to 1933 because I would want to go and knock on the door of every church, every pastor, and say, read Mein Kampf.
Wow.
Understand what's coming. Understand how it's going to affect you and
That's
the whole
good.
world. But you know what? You can't go back. I
That's
can't
good.
do anything about the past.
That's right.
So what I tell my people is, we're going to change the future. We're going to change the way Christians and Jews relate. We're going to change how Christians understand and relate to Jewish people, how they understand that God still loves the Jewish people and he hasn't forsaken them, that he has a plan and a purpose. Jesus is not coming back to some mountain in the United States.
That's exactly right.
Or Mount Fiji, or anywhere in the world. He's coming back here.
That's right.
This place is still important to God. And so I try to help Christians understand that, try to help them understand what's really going on here, help them understand the things from the Bible that they miss because they are reading it in a different language. They're reading it 2,000 or 3,000 years later, and they just miss things.
Yes.
And then we encourage Christians to become involved in righteous action.
Totally.
So we collect money and funds from Christians all over the world to do things in Israel that are designed to show a different side of Christianity, to show that the followers of Jesus love them, that we want to see them blessed, but we don't want to see them killed or destroyed or Israel to cease to exist. And so we're giving food to 22,000 people every month in 40 different communities across Israel.
Wow.
We're working with mayors, we work with the government, and many, many other projects. We helped 58,000 people come back to Israel from the former Soviet Union.
Wow.
So lots and lots of things, but the bottom line is reconciliation.
Reconciliation. Restoration, reconciliation.
Restoration.
It's all about relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Without that deep relationship, nothing else means anything. And the practical hands of help, so to speak, like you're doing, really proves relationship, covenant. And I think that's what they really honor and respect. Mm-hmm. I know that what we're doing when we do that, it means reality.
Yes.
And so why don't you take a moment, look into the camera, and why don't you tell the folks out there again, I know you've been very modest, but tell them broadly what you're doing even around the world, your organization, and what you're over.
Well, let me just start by saying this. For many, many centuries, Christians have been happy to relate to and accept the blessings of the God of Israel. But for much of that time, there has been a reluctance to understand that there's also an Israel of God. And so one of the things that I am trying to do is reconnect those things. That there cannot be a God of something that does not exist. God is a God that is from Israel and is intimately intertwined with the people and nation of Israel. Most of the prophecies in the Bible relate to Israel, and we're living in a day and time when we are seeing more Bible prophecy being fulfilled than at any other time in history. And I am absolutely thrilled to be a Christian that God has called to partner with him in helping fulfill his ancient promises to the nation of Israel. So we do this in many ways, of course, and through many educational programs all around the world. We have offices in 9 countries, and our teams there are wonderful, dedicated Christian followers of Jesus who want to see a change in the future of how Jews and Christians can relate to one another. I often say that, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could join arms, link arms with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and sing the famous Israeli song, Hinei Ma Tov, which of course comes from Psalm 133, where it says, "Behold on how good and how pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity." I believe that the words of James, where he says, "Faith without works is dead," is something that we need to take into consideration in our modern day Christian experience. My father, who is Dr. David Lewis, some of you may have heard of him, he used to paraphrase that, and he said, "Belief without action is deception." I think that we as a church need to get beyond the mental ideas or even the heart ideas of what we believe and step beyond that into righteous action. Because you see, if you don't do something, then do you really believe it? Because when we really believe something, it's going to affect our actions. And that's really what our team here is doing. We're acting on our faith by our actions.
Well, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so you give food relief?
We give food, we repair homes, we help children in schools, we're helping new immigrants, we give pots and pans and blankets and school kits and all sorts of things to new immigrants, a multitude of projects. I think there's something like 13 different projects.
Wow. And
all of it is practical, where there's a need to help the people. And of course, we're also involved with the government of Israel, like you.
Totally.
We've been involved with the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus since its inception. We sponsored their director in Japan just last month, and at that occasion met with members of the Japanese parliament. So we're working on many, many different levels to support Israel and to show God's love and care from Christians.
Well, I believe that's what it's all about. And as we all know, Jesus was the most famous Jew in the world.
Yes, and I have Jewish people that will say things like that to me.
That's right.
I had a mayor of one of the cities in Jerusalem, and I was at his home for dinner. And we're having a general conversation, and it's lovely, and food is great. And all of a sudden he says, I'm fascinated by this man Jesus.
Yes.
And he said, how is it that this Jewish man from 2,000 years ago is still being talked about all over the world? He says, I think he must be the most famous Jew in history. He says, as a leader, I'm fascinated by how did he get people to follow him like that?
That's right.
So
That's right.
there's an interest in those things as well in Israel.
Well, the whole symbolism of the olive tree and the branch, and we're grafted in. We are joined, so to speak. We work together, join hands together to do what we can to extend the kingdom of God,
Right.
not only in Israel, but throughout the world.
Right.
I know Jews have done a tremendous amount of historical good, worldwide good, all through the world.
That's right.
Brilliant people, and they have brought so much to civilization.
Yes.
Again, it comes right back from the seed of God, the seed of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so, bridges of peace, that's tremendous. I'm sure glad that we met last night.
Yeah.
I listened to you as you were one of the speakers, and I'll tell you what, the impact that you and others are making in Israel is certainly tremendous. But why don't you tell also the people, the audience, what can they do to help you?
Well, first of all, what I would suggest is that you go and check out our website. We're at www.bridgesforpeace.com, and there you will be able to discover the wealth and the breadth of what we do. Everything from all kinds of educational materials, knowledge about Israel, what's really happening. We're here on the ground. We can give you up-to-date information, but also about all the different projects that you can be involved in. If you feel a deep calling from God to be involved in Israel, we also have a wonderful volunteer program. People come here and join us for a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. Sometimes they stay forever if we can get them visas. We also have a wonderful internship program for young adults, which when they come here and stay for 11 or 12 months, there are so many opportunities. I couldn't begin to tell you all. So I think the website is the very best way for you to enter into the portal of Bridges for Peace and understand what God is doing through a group of Christians who love the God of Israel and have learned to love his people as well.
Well, that's wonderful, Vicki. I know you've been here how many years now?
I've lived here for 28 years.
28 years.
Yes.
This is really home.
Well, actually, I talk like an American, but I think like an Israeli.
Yes.
At least in part.
I know when you're part of a country, that's what happens.
That's right.
I've lived and lived actually, been missionary in Singapore, Malaysia, and then Kenya.
Right.
But traveled the nations for 31 years. So I know one time I came to America and pastors were asking me if they met me for the first time, where are you from? I'm from the U.S., but I no longer sounded that way.
Yes.
And so I sounded somehow international or European, or they would say all sorts of things.
Right.
But
well, I'm more confused than that.
Yeah.
Because people will ask me where I'm from originally, and I'll say the United States.
Yeah.
And they'll say yes, but where?
But
and
where?
then I don't know how to answer.
That's right.
Because my father was an evangelist, and we literally traveled all over the United States and Canada when I was growing up. I didn't have a home base.
Yes.
So now, if I want the short answer, I say my family lives in Missouri.
But I live in Israel.
I live in Israel. Yes.
Well, that's a good answer.
Yes.
And I know you're married to a man. What's his name?
My husband's name is Tom, and he is a licensed tour guide here in Israel.
Wow.
And so he has the opportunity to welcome Christian groups from English-speaking countries primarily. And he brags that he turns people that just want to see where Jesus walked into people that love Israel.
Well, you can tell Tom that we plugged him a little bit on this program.
Okay, I will.
In case people want to find a tour guide.
Yes.
So, well, that's good. I know you've seen miracles here too after all these years. So there's some, why don't you give us a testimony or two of what you feel is a miracle of what happened or something like that.
Well, you put me on the spot. So I will say that one of the things that I have seen is that how God protects the people of Israel in times of war.
Totally.
And we've had that ourselves.
Yes.
So I will tell you one of my own personal stories.
Okay.
This was from when I was much younger, and my ear was not as keen to understand the voice of the Lord. I was walking in the streets of Jerusalem. I was going to meet my husband at the Shuk, where the outdoor market where they sell fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
My husband likes timeliness. I knew I needed to meet him at a certain time.
Okay.
So I'm walking up the street, and a thought came into my mind. And the thought was, go into the Book Mavin. Now, the Book Mavin was a used bookstore, and they had English books there, and I like to go to the book Marvin.
Sure.
And I immediately dismissed this thought. I said, no, Becky, you don't have money to go into spend money on books, and you don't have time. Tom is meeting you. Keep going. And so I kept walking. And the thought came again, go into the book Marvin. And again, same arguments, same inner discussion.
Yes.
And the third time the thought came, and I dismissed it again. The next thing I know, I'm standing in the book Marvin. And I'm thinking to myself, how did I get here? Why am I in here? I know I don't have time.
Wow.
I know I don't have money.
Wow.
And right at that moment, a bomb went off just up the street. Right
Oh,
where
my.
I would have been walking.
Oh, my.
You know, I have experienced God's protective power. And I have seen it with my staff as well. When we've been here in times of war, and we were here during the days when a suicide bomb was going off, if something didn't happen for 6 weeks, we got nervous, wondering where it's going to happen.
Sure,
it was so common.
Sure.
And I've seen miracle after miracle after miracle of our staff, some of them being right in the midst of it. One of our staff members was standing at a bus stop, and a bus pulled up to the stop and blew up right there. He was at point zero of that bomb, and people around him were killed.
Wow.
And he was totally protected. He said he felt like a wave of air just went over him, and that the Holy Spirit or God's angels somehow protected him. So I've seen miracles.
You know, that type of testimony is tremendous, and the Holy Spirit will do that for all of us.
That's right.
I know I was here in Israel several years ago, and in the general area with one of my colleagues.
Right.
And we were supposed to be somewhere, and we delayed, and it was good we delayed, because right at that place, somebody was stabbed. Yeah. Right at that very place we would have been.
Spot, yeah.
And so God delayed us.
Yes.
And sometimes we think, oh, it's an unnecessary traffic stop or a flat tire. It could be God's protection.
That's right. Of course, we've seen it for the whole nation.
Yeah.
I remember when Saddam Hussein was lobbing Scud missiles into Israel, and there should have been a tremendous loss of life.
Yes, yes.
Only one person was killed as a direct result of that. I remember the stories in the paper, and one that stands out in my memory was of a religious Jewish man walking up and down on the sidewalk outside of his totally destroyed home. And he was reading Psalms, praising God for the deliverance of his family. And when the reporters asked him, how were you saved? He says, because I have a righteous wife.
My goodness.
Now, he was coming home for the Sabbath, Friday evening.
Yes.
And his wife met him at the door and said, we can't stay here. He says, what do you mean we can't stay here? It's the Sabbath. The Sabbath is going to start in an hour. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We have to stay home.
Yes,
she says, no, we've got to go somewhere. And so he listened to his wife. He took his wife and his children, and they imposed themselves on friends for the Shabbat meal at very little notice.
Yes.
And he stood up in front of the cameras. He stood up in front of the nation, and he said, God, I thank God for a righteous wife because she heard the voice of God.
Wow. Wow. Tremendous.
So many things that show us over and over again. Of course, so many stories of miracles and the battles of Israel. Israel should never have won the 6-day war.
You're right.
Israel should never have won the war.
Israel should not be here right now.
They should not be here. But God is a miracle-working God. And He is, I'm not worried about Israel because I've read the end of the book.
Yeah.
They have a place in the world in the future.
For eternity.
For eternity. And so do we.
That's right.
Because what I said last
That's
night
exactly
is
right.
whatever the nations of this world do, and they may do very unrighteous things, and they may try to force Israel into very difficult situations. There is another kind of a nation, and that is what's talked about in 1 Peter when he says, we are a holy nation. A chosen people. And we can choose to be part of God's plan and His purposes, even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible, even when it maybe even puts our families at risk. We can choose to be part of His holy plan, and we will be part of the blessing, even if the nation we're born in is part of the cursing.
This is Dr. Jonathan Hansen, President of World Ministries International, once again, coming to you from the headquarters of Bridges for Peace International, Becky Brimmer, President and CEO. I know you've enjoyed this interview, you've enjoyed these testimonies, and you know how to reach her. And God richly bless you. Shalom.
The Warning Television and radio programs are means by which Dr. Jonathan Hansen, through World Ministries International, WMI, endeavor to prepare God's people, governments, and society for the soon coming day of Christ the Lord. Dr. Hansen's free monthly newsletter is another means by which this is done. This is sent out in paper hard copy as well as in digital email formats. You can telephone 360-629-5248, 360-629-5248 to request your subscription today, or visit www.worldministries.org. That is www.worldministries.org, and click on the Contact Us link. WMI is a 100% partner-supported ministry. It is through tithes, missions love offerings, and donations given to WMI that Dr. Hansen is able to share the warning message to church leadership, political leaders, and society as a whole. World Ministries International needs the committed support of people who see the increasing relevance of the warning message to be shared in this time we are in. Are you a prayer warrior with an intercessor's anointing and have a burden for Dr. Jonathan Hansen and World Ministries International? If so, we need to hear from you so that we can unite together in strategy and prayer. Telephone 360-629-5248, 360-629-5248, and request to become a member of the Soldiers of the Cross prayer team. Or visit www.worldministries.org and sign up to be a member of Soldiers of the Cross through the prayer and intercessor links on the website. The Lord told Dr. Hansen that there are 200,000 supporting newsletter recipients and 2,000 supporting intercessors in every nation that are there to join in the battle and sounding the alarm to the people and nations. Please join the ranks of those who seek to fight on behalf of the truths of God's Word with the prosperity, liberty, and freedoms it brings. For any monthly commitment of $25 or more, a partner will receive Dr. Hansen's monthly newsletter and 1 week's warning radio message on CD or cassette tape. For any monthly commitment of $100 or more, a partner will receive 4 of Dr. Hansen's warning television programs on DVD, in addition to the warning radio program on CD and the monthly newsletter. Please understand that no materials sent by Dr. Jonathan Hansen and WMI are distributed as a result of a purchase, but are shared with recipients as Dr. Hansen's way of saying thank you for your support. You can support WMI by using Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or Discover by dialing 360-629-5248, 360-629-5248. Again, dial 360-629-5248. You can send a check or money order in U.S. dollars to World Ministries International, P.O. Box 277, Stanwood, Washington, 98292. Again, that's World Ministries International, P.O. Box 277, Stanwood, Washington, 98292. Shalom, and may the Lord richly bless you.